Hello and welcome to Fight News Now. I'm John Pollock. Coming up on today's show, it's a big look at UFC 198. We will have the latest episode of Embedded, a big look at the middleweight fight involving Vitor Belfort and Ronaldo Jacare Souza. And we're chatting all of the news with Robin Black and John Ramdine, including a look at both the UFC 198 and Bellator 154 events, as well as a new weight cutting procedure that the UFC is installing. All that and more coming up on today's edition of Fight News Now. Here with John Ramdine and Robin Black to wind down the week as we head into a weekend that will feature cards from the UFC as well as Bellator.
And Glory.
And, well, Glory as well for some of those that are either watching it later or have already watched it, depending on the time continuum out there. But some big stuff that's going on that's going to have some lasting ramifications. The Las Vegas Review-Journal has outlined the new weight-cutting policies that the UFC is instituting, where when fighters arrive at the host city the week of, they need to be within 8% of their target weight for later in the week. And if you are off of that, doesn't mean you're completely off the card, but they're going to have their eye on you to make sure you are not dehydrating yourself. It's a big focus on weight cutting, which to me is one of the biggest stories of the year and something that this sport has, we all knew this was coming. And I think if you've been following it closely, we knew that these extreme weight cuts, there was a limit, and I'm glad to see that they are addressing this in a serious way.
Yeah, I think all this really means is that they're trying to make the sport of mixed martial arts as good as they possibly can make it. They can trying to make it as safe as humanly possible for the athletes, because as you pointed out, there are some athletes willing to take extreme measures to get to a certain weight class. And I think that all that's got to change. It's got to stop. It's not healthy for the athletes, and it could really, really jeopardize them in the interim and in the long run.
And sometimes it requires scare tactics, the one being, hey, your fight will be pulled. And so, because we know these athletes, most of them very resistant to change of things that are patterns for them. And big weight cuts are, you know, a normal part of the sport.
It's true. And scare tactics or things, penalties, those are good. But these guys have found, I think, the right middle here. Yes, in the future, you must be within 8% or X, Y, and Z is going to happen. In the meantime, if you can't do it, we're going to get you weight management counseling. We're going to keep an extra eye on you. You're going to be medically supervised. They're helping them do it. It's very smart. It's been well thought out. Yet at the same time, Friday at 3 o'clock Eastern time, we saw Cyborg get on the scale at 139 pounds. And her nutritionist, George Lockhart, said she will walk in the cage at 168 pounds. And that's 29 pounds. And my math is not perfect, but that ain't 8%.
And what do you think, Leslie Smith? I mean, we talked
about...
Not
168.
Exactly.
She didn't look like she dehydrated. She's a small 35er. Maybe she'll weigh 144, and she'll fight a woman who's 168. She's going to get smashed, and she's going to get smashed by a big, powerful athlete.
It's certainly going to look good, though.
Well, it's certainly something that I think as we continue, it's going to be a big story. And UFC 199, that's going to be a real telltale sign with the different weigh-in procedures that California's introduced and some others as well. Now, a guy that we have not heard from in quite some time is Gray Maynard, who has not fought in over a year. He's lost his last 4, dating back to the loss to TJ Grant all the way back in 2013. He has announced he is moving down to 145 pounds, and he is going to be competing on the TUF Season 23 finale card. And I think with Gray Maynard, this is going to be his last-ditch effort at this point, going down an additional weight class and taking on a guy in Fernando Bruno that's not the most well-known guy, has fought in the UFC once, but this is essentially a test to see if Gray Maynard can still continue effectively and at a new weight class.
Yeah, I have a question for Robin, because we've seen during the changes that some fighters that we'll use 155 pounds as an example, some are going up to 170, some have decided to go to 145 pounds. What is the reasoning for that?
So there are multiple reasons, but when you look at it, many changes happen at one time. And when many changes happen, it's hard to track the metrics to decide what change caused what. But a number of things, dehydration differences, and rehydration with IV. So if you can no longer rehydrate with IV, you can't cut as much weight and get back up safely. Therefore, you may be at a higher weight class. If you used to use things that are now banned under USADA, and you are now a smaller, fighter, you may fight at a lower weight class. Now, Maynard never failed a drug test or anything like that, but he built his body up as the wrestler mentality did at the time.
The prototype.
Armor it up, yeah, he was that prototype. Armor up, build some size, power lifting, explosive lifting, Olympic lifting, tons and tons of protein, wrestling-based guy. He's big. He's a 155-pounder. You start to change that as you get older. He can't just punch his way through anymore. He needs to work with finesse and stuff. You change it. You go back to more of a skill and thinking-based guy. You don't need that muscle anymore. Also, you take less damage. You're not getting hit by his big guys at 145, so it makes sense for him to move that way. The guy still wants to fight. And it's cool of the UFC because he's contributed a lot through that era. Cool of the UFC to say, okay, how are you going to do it? Are you going to do it at a lower weight class? Okay, we're going to go give you this shot. Go and prove yourself right.
What's got your interest this weekend, John, if you have to pare it down to a fight or two? And we can include Bellator in this as well. They do have a card on Saturday night in San Jose. Very a quality main event, but certainly losing out on that lightweight bout between Michael Chandler and Josh Thompson. Is Bellator going to be in the shadows on Saturday night?
Unfortunately, I think so, because the fact that they lost the Josh Thompson-Michael Chandler fight, and they tried to make up for it with, doing a great job for the fans by bringing in Sergey Haratonov. So if you're a hardcore fan, that got you excited, but Haratonov's now off the card, and they were still trying to add to it by adding Cyborg, Chris Justino's ex-husband, Cyborg Evangelista, against Sadawad, and that's going to be a tremendous battle. However, I've been a Vitor Belfort fan since this game started, and seeing Vitor do his thing. I love Jacare. I love all the jiu-jitsu guys on this fight card. Jacare, Damian Maia, and I've just been very impressed with the Evolução Thai guys, and I know they're going to do very well in Curitiba.
Yeah,
it's just going to be a great. I'm just so excited to sit down and watch fight 1 to fight, what is it, 13?
Yeah, me too, man. I mean, you get your friends over, and this is one of those ones that's gonna. I mean, this one. Then you got Weidman Rocklet. Then you got 200.
BJ Penn on the card.
Yeah. BJ. Actually, BJ Penn versus Maynard debuting at 45 might have been a nice matchup too. Maybe if they both win, we'll see that. But yeah, hey man, I wouldn't change any of these fights for almost anything. But Michael Chandler is somebody I would have turned over. Whatever fight was on then, I would have checked it out. With him off the card, you're gonna just sit down. You're gonna open some pops. You're gonna gather some friends. And you're going to watch UFC 198.
Awesome. Yes, a correction, 12 fights with the elimination of Anderson Silva and Uriah Hall. But gun to my head, honestly, I'm really stoked for the heavyweight title fight. But to me, Damian Maia and Matt Brown is right alongside that. Those are the two fights to me that I think are going to be outstanding. And we talked about it a lot during our coverage of the weigh-ins. I think the audience is going to be as much of a story. And just hearing that atmosphere, I think it's going to be reminiscent of the cards they have done in Ireland, other cards in Brazil. But the fact that we have 45,000 people, it's going to be magnified.
Cyborg and Nate Marquardt on the card. Really, it's just there's too many big names on this card. We're just looking as fans. The fact that I'm not on TV, I'm sitting in my basement watching this fight card. I just want to see the best of Brazilian and international mixed martial arts.
And that one where you're not even paying attention, you're like, what? Shogun's next? Oh, it's going to be fun.
All right, we will have our preview show of UFC 198 Saturday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, a full hour dedicated to the card from Curitiba, Brazil.